All right, welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about the overview of the United States Constitution. So, we just got done talking about the convention and all the compromises. Well, now we're going to talk about the document itself and how it is set up. And, what did these framers of the Constitution come up with? So, how is this thing designed, how it's laid out? So, that's what we're going to delve into today. So, as we look at the Constitution, all right, what is it? First and foremost, it's our nation's basic law. Right? This is the supreme law of the land in the United States. It creates our political institutions. So we take some of these government principles, these Enlightenment principles, separation of powers, checks and balances, and we're going to start to put them into play here. It assigns and divides power in the government, sets up our system of checks and balances as well, and provides certain guarantees to the citizens, which we will see can be found in the Bill of Rights. So, as we look at it, it sets the broad rules for the game. So, as we jump into it, the first part of the Constitution is the preamble. I'm not going to click on that link, but that is Schoolhouse Rock. I'm sure some of you, not all of you, but some of you in middle school had to memorize the preamble. So, if later on you can click on the link and sing the song, I know you'll love it. You don't want me to sing. I can't sing or dance. So, that's a good thing for you. But let's get back to the structure. So if we look at the preamble is the Constitution, talks about what the document's going to do. And then Article 1 is the legislative branch. The framers of the Constitution, as you know, being very leery and skeptical of power, they wanted to deal with the legislative branch first, because in a democracy, you want something done, you got to make the laws. And that was where they took a lot of time dealing with that. Like, how are we going to set this up? That's where we take our Virginia plan, our New Jersey plan, mesh them together. We're going to set up the legislative branch, decide what powers they're going to have. All that is laid out in Article 1, and obviously we will delve deeper into that throughout the year, especially when we do the chapter on Congress. Article 2 is the executive branch. That's the next thing that the framers, wanted to talk about, because, again, they're still leery of having an executive. Right? Especially how much power will this executive have? Because they just got to a king. Should we have one? Should we have multiple? Well, they settled on one executive. How long should this person rule? They never set term limits. George Washington set that precedent when he stepped down after a second. But term limits won't be set until the 22nd Amendment. Then they tackled that. And third thing that they tackled about, they knew they needed a court system because there was not one in the Articles of Confederation. But the court system here, they need to set it up, but they were not sure how much power that the courts were really going to have. They just know they needed courts. When we talk about the judicial branch, we'll talk about, how it got its power, and, eventually over time it's going to get more power and things like that. So, but if we look at this part of the Constitution, the preamble, Article 1, 2, and 3, what is the major themes here? We have the separation of powers, right? So we don't want all one person or people holding all the power, so we're going to divide it up. And then also the system of checks and balances. How can one branch not let another branch become too powerful, right? Again, that was part of what the framers wanted with that big checks and balances, because they didn't want a strong executive, or they didn't want a too strong legislator. There was got to be a way that they can check each other's power to make sure that, again, one doesn't get more power than the other. So they set up that system. Moving along, Article 4, powers reserved for the states. So when we look at things like full faith and credit, that clause, that's just basically saying states are very sure that, every state had to go through something. You look through driver's license, for instance. My driver's license is from the state of Ohio. But when I drive to Florida, let's say I get pulled over in Georgia for speeding, they have full faith and credit in my license, and the fact that Ohio has trained me well enough that I know how to drive on the roads in Georgia. So that's where they have that full faith and credit, that, I was trained properly to handle a vehicle, know the responsibility and all that. So, states will respect other states' laws and things like that. They got to give faith and credit in each other. So that's what reserved powers of the Constitution, Article 4. Also, privileges and immunities, right? So what privileges do you have in some states over other states? Or what privileges do the states get within themselves in the Constitution? So, there's always that option, or that laid out in that part of the Constitution. And the extradition. All right, so basically saying like if I committed a crime in Ohio, there's a warrant out for my arrest, and I flee to Louisiana, and I get in trouble in Louisiana, I get in trouble with the cops, and they run and they say, "Hey, you got a warrant out for your arrest in Ohio." They're going to send me back to Ohio to serve that punishment. That's what that means. When you extradite criminals is normally where you hear that phrase. So again, if I have the warrant out for my arrest, I committed a crime, I flee, I try to run, but then I get arrested in another state, they're going to send me back to make sure I get punished. That's extradition. All right. So then moving on, Article 5 of the Constitution. The framers were smart. They were like, how can this document be considered a living document? How can this thing change and change with the times? So they set up a way to an amendment. What is an amendment? An amendment is a change or an addition. So there's two ways we can officially amend the Constitution, and this is huge. This is important, right? So you always got to think of your fractions: 2/3, 3/4, 2/3, 3/4. So the first way, and the only way we've amended the Constitution thus far, is if you get 2/3 of both houses of Congress to propose this amendment. All right, then they propose it, and then it goes to the states, and then you need 3/4 of the states to ratify it or to approve it. Once that happens, boom, it becomes an amendment. So the second way, that's never been done before, is if you have 2/3 of the states propose an amendment, and then they call a constitutional convention, and then if 3/4 of the states then approve it, then that's the second way you can amend the Constitution. But if you notice the two different ways, the second way is all left up to the states, right? And so Congress and the federal government doesn't like that way. So if they see like 2/3 of the states start to like muster up or do things, that's when Congress is like, okay, no, we'll take it from here. We'll take over. We'll pass laws. We'll do what we need to do, right? Because the federal government doesn't like giving up that power. But that is very important. So don't forget your fractions: 2/3, 3/4. 2/3 of Congress propose it, and then you need 3/4 of the states to ratify it. Or if 2/3 of the states propose it, they call a special ratifying convention, and then 3/4 of the states ratify it. So that is Article 4. Article 5. Article 6 now is national supremacy. So basically, Article 6 says supremacy clause, basically stating that the federal government in the Constitution is above any state and or local law. So, if there's a law that is conflicting between the state and the national government law will remain supreme over the state law. So like right now, not all the states have legalization of marijuana. Some have it for recreational and medicinal purposes. Other states have it for, just medicinal, like Ohio, we're just medicinal. We don't have it for recreational. So, the federal government says no. State law says yes, it's legal, but federal government says no. So if the federal government wanted to come in and bust some of these marijuana dispensaries in some of these states, they can do that. They have that right because of the supremacy clause. Federal law is going to remain supreme or trump any state law. And then also in Article 6, it deals with oaths. So like any public official must take an oath, to protect the Constitution or whatever level of government that is. But on the federal government, it talks about any national job or position, you need to take an oath. And then Article 7, which is today, it's pretty mute. This deals with the ratification process. We needed 9 of 13 states to ratify this document to make it the supreme law of the land, which it did happen. So now Article 7 it's mute right now. So it's pointless. If we look at the major themes that come out of this one, this is federalism. Federalism is the division of powers between state, local, and federal government, right? So Articles 4, 5, and 6, basically, 4 gives power to the state. 5 talks about how to amend the Constitution, which can be done through the federal government and or through the states, and then national supremacy. That overall theme is federalism. And if you don't know that, don't worry about that term federalism, because our whole next chapter is going to be, whole next test is going to be all over federalism. All right. So then moving on, the next part of our document is the Bill of Rights, which is actually our civil liberties. right? And this is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution to help get this document ratified through the states. You know, a lot of people did not want it, and we'll talk about the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists moving forward. But the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, was passed to help get this document passed, and the people that didn't support it because they wanted their rights written down, they wanted their liberties written down, because coming from England, they weren't written down. So they wanted to make sure they knew what their rights were. So that's why the first 10 amendments spells out our specific rights and our specific liberties. And again, as you can see, the third bullet, this was a compromise to ratification. Then after that, amendments 11 through 27 are all based off of historical events, which again, we'll go over later on when we get there. So to kind of review the concepts of the Constitution, Articles 1, 2, and 3 deals with separation of powers and checks and balances. Articles 4, 5, and 6 deal with federalism. In our amendments, this allows for flexibility in our Constitution. Makes this a living document because it can and will change with the time. It's over 240 years old. And so therefore, you know, that's why we consider it a living document, because it can be changed and changed as often as we want it to. But think about it. We've only changed it 27 times in the first 10 times were to get it ratified. So 17 times since 1787. That's not bad. Not bad at all. All right. So that is the overview of the Constitution. All right. As we head forward, we will talk about, like I said, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. So stay tuned, guys. Good work, and I will talk to you later. Got to exit.